Okay, so this is a quick series of videos to start doing Node.js development with Visual Studio Code, or just play around with Node a little bit, try to figure it out as a technology. I teach Python in one of my other courses, so I'll make a lot of references there, just to say, well, you know, the way we're going to do it here is not that different than how we did it before. If you haven't done Python, you can just ignore those parts and focus on the Node.js part. The first part is to get the software, okay? And so you can get Visual Studio Code off code.visualstudio.com. I'm sure the default download for you will be fine. For me, I use I guess it's like an all users install. So other platforms, I go here, system installer. That's the one I use, just because I have to set up a virtual desktop for my students. And so it's a little bit better if I use that version. But it's the same build number and that. It's just configured slightly differently. But the first piece of software you should get and install is Node. And I'm going to run with 15.2. Now, I've already downloaded these and that. And so I have a bunch of stuff to show you later. I've already downloaded here, and I have this software ready to go. So like I said, and I've been experimenting with earlier versions, but this is an MSI file. You can just double click on it or right click and go install, okay, in that. And so it's going to install Node. So I want to get Node laid down first. I want to test that Node actually is kind of working and it's kind of aware that it exists on my system. So I'll go next, agree to the license agreement. I don't like things in program files, and I don't like paths with spaces in them. Old school always causes problems. So let's go next, and then it'll get busy, and I'm going to go with the vanilla install. I'm not going to change too many things, and I'm definitely not checking that box, so no to that box. And then start the install. And there's parts that seem slow, fast, slow, and that sort of thing. Yes, I do want you to put that onto the system. And that. So we'll see how this goes in that. But I do want to get Node laid down first, do a simple test, okay, to say, okay, no, it found it. And I should be installing Node 15.2.0. So it should, if it finds some other Node install, then I have no idea how it got in the system, but you never know what other products might be using Node at the same time in that. So we'll just let this finish off in that. I'm not going to clip out any of this. So you get a feel, look, it's going to be a couple of minutes and you're going to be up and running in that after your downloads, however long they take. So the key is, I'll repeat this again, install Node first and then test that it actually is working. So is it working? We're going to find out. I'm going to just do a regular command prompt, CMD, because part of what I asked it to do was to add, well, part of what it does is it adds itself to the path in that. So I'm just going to go here and go Node hyphen version. Now, if it worked out, it'll, Node will run, it'll check to see what version is 15.2. That's the one I installed. Fantastic. I'm good with that. So that means Node got installed and the OS can find it. Okay. Another thing that comes with Node, it has its own little command prompt, which is actually pretty good. I'm not sure if it has its own program directory here. Yes, Node. So this Node command prompt, right, also fires up and it knows where Node is and where all the packages are installed. I'll talk about NPM in a future video in that. So have I ever used it? Yes. How? When I was building an Express application, I found it much more stable to do it in this particular command prompt in that. The PowerShell gets really confused in that. And you'll see me switch that out shortly. So Node is installed and tested. So I'm good there. I'm now going to install Visual Studio Code. And so if you go with the default download, it's called user setup. Mine is just called VSCode setup. I think they're about the same size. It's just a slight tweak on the configuration. Because when I install this, I have to install it not just for myself, but for all users. And so I use this version here. I usually go right click run as administrator, which is different experience than the MSI file, right? And that. And that's really about stuff getting into the all users profile and that as I install. And so I'm going to accept the license agreement, go next. I'm definitely changing that because I do not like spaces. Right? A PPS, and I have a VSCode. It's already there. It's an empty directory because I've had previous installs. So I'll try to rip everything out in that. But I wanted to show you this is that VS Code, this is where the software is going to go, but I also made a VS Code extensions and I want all my extensions to go in there. And the reason I don't put it in the user profile again is because I'm typically installing for all users on a virtual desktop and that. And so we used to use command line switches when we start up VS Code. Oh, by the way, that extension directory is just next door kind of deal. And yes, I do. And next, that'll be fine. Add to path, I'm okay with that, and install. But on GitHub, I found another solution on an open issue that some of us had. And they say that, well, we do actually have this, this not quite so publicized that too many people know. We do have this VS Code extensions system environment variable. And if you set that to that directory, then VS Code, no matter how you launch it, will go to this directory to find its extensions. And extensions for VS Code become important, especially if you want to do other development beyond Node and that. So this, I'm going to let it finish. It says it's finished and it will launch Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to do that. And when it launches, it should actually, I'll close off this window here. I want it to start in as sort of like default installation kind of setup, which is with a dark theme and that, and with a small font. I'm going to change those pretty quickly. And then I'm going to sort of hook up to a particular directory and do our first Node application. It's not going to be fancy. This is all just about testing are things installed properly before I try to do anything big, because I don't want to get frustrated. So one thing I changed is I changed the color scheme under preferences. I just find that from a teaching perspective, so that you guys can actually see what I'm typing, and there's good contrast that when I'm doing live demos in my class, I typically go with the light default. I find in Python it's the best. It gives me the best sort of feedback, okay, in that as I type code. But this is a Node.js thing, so. But there's a reason I set it up this way. Also file under preferences settings. I'm going to go to the text editor, crank the font size. You can actually see what I'm typing in that. I find that's important too. I'll just go 20. Okay. Some other settings you'll see me turn on as we go along that, I just think these are good suggestions. Figure out a font size that's good for you. Figure out a color scheme that's good for you. Lots of good color schemes in the marketplace. I'm not sure if that's what they call it. Night Owl is a popular one as well. So what I'm going to do now is hook into a folder. So file, open folder. This goes to some strange place in that. So I will go my D drive, and I'll probably go into video because I'm recording a video, and I probably have Node First Steps directory. And in here, I'm going to call this step 01 test install. And that's all I really want to do. Is this actually working? And then I go select folder. This is how I do it in my Python course. We make a folder that we're going to put all our files into and start there. I'm going to make a folder here, put all my JavaScript files in, and do it there. Because Node is an interpreter for JavaScript, much like the Python interpreter is a interpreter for Python. Okay, so they're both interpreted sort of languages, and that a little bit different than Java, C# and those types of compiled languages. So I don't have anything in here yet because I just want to test, is this working? Now built into VS Code is this terminal window, and what that really means is either CMD, the command prompt, or the PowerShell, right? So I go into terminal, right? Default PowerShell, and so you can change that, and we're going to. Actually, in my Python course, the extensions keep reminding us, "Oh, we don't like PowerShell. Please switch to command prompt." So, and that. So we'll go okay. command shell is a little bit different. And so here you have a choice. What's your default shell going to be? We're going to set it to the CMD. I need to trash this and then open up. Now when I open up a new terminal, it'll be the regular command prompt. Now I tested this before, so is that test still valid? Let's find out. Node -- version. Oh, found it. Good. What I like. Okay. So when we're working with Python, there's a lot of tooling built in because there's lots of extensions, and we can run our code by right-clicking on it and that kind of thing. But all it does really is it opens up a terminal and it goes, "Hey Python, run my Python file." And that's how this experience is going to be. So let's get a little Node.js file in here to run and test to see what that experience is like. And then I'll show you some other tooling that seems to get picked up once it figures out, hey, you've got Node on this machine. I can do some extra stuff for you. So you can create a new file by going File here, or just right-click, New File here, right? And that. And so I'm going to call it main.js. You will probably never see anything called main.js out there. They always call it app.js. But in my Python course, we always start off with main.py, right? Probably because I'm from the Java land. It was always, main.java and that. So that's me showing my roots in that. Now, in Python, there's always a way to comment. So in Python, it's one of these, but in JavaScript, it's two of these. And there's nothing wrong with hello world if what you're trying to do is, I'm trying to just test my install. Is this working? So you don't want some crazy test in that. Just basic, can Visual Studio Code find Node? We proved down the terminal that the terminal thinks it can find Node. All right. And so to do that, we'll just do console.log. And that is basically, the same as print in Python. That's how I'm using it. Well, conceptually, that's how I'm using it. I should put some parentheses in here in that. And we can put some other notes. Again, if you're not a Python user, that's okay. Just ignore this stuff. It's the same. It's basically that. Okay. And so I'll do a little test. Console, and then IntelliSense, hey, I know what console is. Bet you want a log. Yep. So it knows what log is and that sort of stuff. So IntelliSense has helped me out there. Now it's just built into IntelliSense. I've added no extensions to my knowledge yet. And I'll say, welcome to Node first steps. So we just want to, hey, how do I run that, right? So, well, we can go down here. I'm in this directory, right, where this file is stored, and that. So I could just go node.main.js, okay, that sort of thing. Nothing came out, right? Didn't work. So why? Not saved. Not saved. So here's another suggestion. Turn on autosave. Okay, and that's on the menu there. Now I can click in the window, hit the up arrow key. That's my last command. So it knows the history of the commands that you've issued into the command prompt, and run it. Now it comes out. So that's that. That's good that popped up, because if you just installed this, you're not familiar with the software, you're not going to turn autosave on by default, because would you even know that it's there? Okay, so I do recommend having autosave on. Otherwise, what the code you just ran and saw the output of down in the terminal, was that the code you were looking at on the screen? It could be an older version, and that can be very frustrating in that. So far we've installed Node, tested it separately. We installed Visual Studio Code, right? Changed some default settings around themes and font size, and that came in, made a folder, main.js. What you'll see out there a lot is app.js, right? You'll see that in quite a few places on the Node side, and how we can run it in the terminal. And that there are some other things that run configurations and that, but this is getting into some fancy stuff. We can add a run configuration, like how do I want to run? I could have a folder here with a few hundred JavaScript files. And so when someone comes in, how do they run this, right? So here it's pretty obvious there's only one, but we can go add configurations. And so in there, it said, well, there's a whole bunch of things I just saw, right? I found Chrome and I found Edge, right? And I found Node.js, right? And Node.js preview, right? Probably developer revision. So which one do you want? So I'll go Node.js here. And what it does is it creates this file. But where is that? So now inside my folder, there's a little .VSCode hidden folder, and in there there's a launch JSON. And so you can have several different launches in here, but this particular one right now will basically in this workspace folder run my main.js, and it kind of figures out, well, it's a node deal, right? And that. And so then once this file exists, and that, I can just close it. When I go up here, run, start without debugging probably, right? It knows to run this particular file, but it gives me a slightly different terminal, different colors, right? So this is it issuing a command, the command line. Hey, go to C apps, Node.js, Node.exe, right? The one we installed. Oh, by the way, run main.js, the one that is in the folder that I'm in now, which is step 01 test install. And in a different color, this is the output from your program. So if you like that, that's one way to run it, or you can be okay in the terminal. Okay, so I just want to show you, like I said, how to install the two products. Order I found did matter. Get Node installed first. Doesn't hurt to test it independently to make sure that the system can find it. Then you can come in. You can decide on what themes you want and font sizes you want. Probably want to turn autosave on. Okay, and you probably do want to switch your default shell, the terminal down here, from PowerShell to CMD. But that's all I wanted to show you in this video, and that's a wrap.